Surrender. When I heard of the two black horses and what they had done, I saw them, beasts of glistening coal, morning mist rising, black heads falling, lifting. And I knew at once they had meant no harm, in love with their shining power, with their own great galloping, careless in play, and the squat white beehives, simple, innocent, and in their way. The invisible work shifting inside, cracking and creaking, oozing and seeping as they toppled, smashed. And after all that the bees had gathered, built, the young they had nurtured, all they had given of all of their lives, and all that they knew of togetherness, industry, faith, the beautiful honeycomb. What else could those bees do? And I saw the bee black cloud circling, the first horse knowing, wild-eyed, as thousands of tiny angled striking wings stormed, and the horse reared and reared, then crashed to earth as bees dropped and everything lay dying. And then I saw the bees that were left move on their close-packed way to the second horse, as the second horse broke free, running, wildly running. For what else can a horse do when it scents fresh water, but gather its massive pumping speed and hurl itself to the rushing river, thrashing and bucking, the power of the water, the power of all those bees, their home lost, their hours of work undone. And the horse treading water, slower and slower, like wading honey, and the water stronger, stronger, till the field grew still, and the water still, and the silence fell, and all that was left was this story, and us to tell it.
I noticed through your poetry that nature is there as an inspiration. Quite a lot of your poems are about outside and being out walking around and interacting with nature.
They are actually, that's true. But it takes other people to point it out to me, Deirdre. I don't really realise that, but it is true. Somebody said to me once, why do you write so much about birds? And I had to look back at everything I'd written and realise that, yeah, that is very true. I do. I write a lot about flowers and plants, trees. Yeah, I do. And colour.
Spend a lot of time outdoors then?
Well, a lot more now since COVID. I wouldn't say huge amounts. In fact, I probably spend more time inside at a computer than I do outside. So, and maybe that's it. Maybe I like to write about what's out there.
And makes you more attentive maybe when you are out. When did you, I know you started writing as a child, Cathy, but when did you first identify that this is something you could actually do for work as a job?
I remember not for a long time. We were never brought up thinking that was even an option at all. There were no creative writing degrees or support for writers in the way that there are now, and that I end up giving to lots of other people. It was go to the careers officer, tell them you like English, and they suggested you become a teacher, or if you liked psychology, a psychologist. And I remember saying how much I like writing and mooting the idea and getting that very, well, that's not something that's a real job, is it? So very much growing up with the idea that that was something you did in your spare time, and it could never lead to a career or anything like that. And I suppose then kind of forging my own career, because it didn't come in the book, about how you can actually write and support other people to write, and made it up as I went along, really. Started with employment while writing in my spare time, and gradually moved towards making that, not the writing itself, but anything to do with writing, as being part of what I could get paid to do. And so it's all become the writing that's underneath all that and a lot of it helping other people to do the same thing, I guess. When I first knew I could do that, though, I think that took a long time. And I think it does for most writers, that there's various stages you go through of, well, I'm writing, but that's very different than defining yourself as a writer. I always want to do that when somebody says, oh, you are a writer. Because being a writer is a way of life, isn't it? It's so much more than just putting words on a page, I think. And I think I really knew I was a writer when it started getting really hard. And I realised that if you were being rejected and not getting anywhere very fast, and sometimes not being able to write, to have time to write, not be able to earn money while you were doing it and all of that stuff, but doing it anyway. I think that's when you know you're a real writer, when you do it despite it all, don't you? And you don't give up because fame isn't in the offing or publication or whatever. You just do it anyway because you can't not. I think when it gets difficult is when I knew. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember John Lucas making a joke like that. Somebody said that if you have writer's block, at least it does mean you're a writer because you're missing it. Yeah. And you did actually come back to teaching because you do so much mentoring of other writers now.
I do.
Yeah. Can you talk us through some of the kind of the work that's involved in mentoring?
In mentoring?
Yeah.
Mentoring very much I do on a one-to-one basis, or that can be done in groups. And I train other people to become mentors as well. And really mentoring is, I like to think of it as empowering someone else to make their own decisions. I often think that a lot of what I do actually is giving other writers permission to be who they want to be. And that sounds weird, but it's I was talking about it only this morning with someone that I've been mentoring actually on the phone for over a year, who's writing a novel. And she says that quite a lot now. She says that it's all about perception, which it is. It's not about how good your writing is, or it's about what you think about yourself and your writing that gets in the way. It's like you have to get out of your own way of what you're trying to do, because it's you that will in the end scupper that. And often a mentor can give their impression of how they see that person and how they see that person's writing, and give them a different perception than the very negative one a lot of people have of themselves. So it's a lot of active listening. A lot of it's intuitive. It's about reflecting back what people are saying to me so that they hear it in a slightly different way, and picking up the emphases people put on things. It very, very quickly, whenever you mentor a writer, gets away from the writing and towards who they are as a person and what they feel about themselves and their writing, every single time. So if there's one thing I've learned over all the years I've done writing, facilitating and all the rest of it, is that if you don't address the person behind the writing, then you're not going to get the best writing out of them anyway. So I love mentoring. I went into it because I was mentored myself early on, and I found it the most invaluable thing I ever did, really. Helped me to see myself in a different way, I think.
It does sound like your interest in psychology has found an outlet. So you have come back to make your own life. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. You've been doing a lot of group work over the years. In the last few years, you've been working with community groups and the over 55 writing groups. Has that all stopped during COVID, or how are you managing?
No, it's all changed, because I realised how many workshops I was doing in different pockets for different people, some independently and some with partners. And I made a decision. 55 plus was having to change at the theatre because of funding. So I developed something I've been working on for a long time, which is the Writer Highway, which is a programme of support for writers, which could incorporate all the courses I was doing, plus the coaching, plus the mentoring, plus funded projects, anything I wanted to do within it. And my aim was to carry on facilitating these different things, but to bring all those people together across the groups to also do things together. And I've been doing that. It's the end of its first year doing that. And I've got about 70 members now who keep coming back on courses. They all come together for open mics and competitions. So it's a way of people being on a course, but also being part of a much wider supportive network of other writers, and having volunteers who I'm just gathering to help me from that. So I'm really sort of building a bit of a writing community, but it's very focused on well-being. So everything about it is about supporting the individual and looking at who they are and their unique position, as well as excellent writing tuition alongside that. Hard work, but very rewarding. And your question about COVID is that I had to move all that in the Easter holidays, everybody from meeting in person to doing classes on Zoom. And that was from someone, me, who hadn't a clue what Zoom even was at that point. I had to learn it all and then support everyone else in little groups to access it as if I knew exactly what I was doing and always had, until they all felt ready enough to do classes on it. And now they're all saying, after some trepidation, that actually there's a lot of advantages to doing things on Zoom. And it's been a real lifeline to some people. So it's really opened my eyes as well as to the different ways of doing things. So no, I haven't pulled back. I've been even busier, if anything, while teaching, while doing all that, yeah.
One of the things you've always said about freelance work is that you say yes to so many things because, just that fear of the offers might dry up.
Yeah.
But it does sound like one of the things that bringing this together into a network is a way of making life more manageable. At least the travel is taken out of us. Yes,
that's true. And there is potential if everything gets back to normal, to do a bit of both and to have courses, something like the Open University does, where sometimes you get together in person and other things can be done quite adequately online. I use breakout groups a lot for small feedback groups during classes on Zoom, and people really, really like doing that. It's different again from meeting in person doing that. Somehow quite focused and without interruption, and people really get a lot from doing that online. So that's opened my eyes to that as well.
Help accessibility. I mean, for all sorts of reasons, people can't always get out to classes.
I've had a lot of shielded people because a lot of people I work with are older, and a lot of illness among some of the participants, and it enabled them to be there when they wouldn't have been able to if we'd been meeting in person and hadn't been previously. So yeah, some people we lost on the way because not everyone's confident with it, but largely with the support, it's gone very well.
You talked about well-being. There's so much conversation out there about the place of the arts and the importance of the arts. Could you say something about that, about what reading and writing does for us? A small question.
Hugely therapeutic. And I don't know, writing is a way of putting your thoughts on paper to make sense of them. Sometimes just in the act of writing or free writing, it's about freeing up the side of your brain that really needs to be given free rein away from the editing critical side of you, to get things out. It gives you a voice. I work with a lot of people who have never felt they've really had that voice, and find that writing really frees them into saying all kinds of things they wouldn't have normally, and then being able to get the support from the rest of the group. I always think a good writing group, if it's been running a while, is a bit like a therapy group, but better, because it's not focused on people being ill. It always comes back to the writing. And in doing that, you're giving therapy at the same time without overtly doing it, if that makes any kind of sense. But actually, recently I've been doing a project called Mind the Gap, which has been for women memoir writers who have suffered a lot of trauma in their lives. And it was a sort of cross between writing tuition about memoir and support and feedback, and looking at their lives as well, and obviously talking a lot. And the feedback on that was amazing. Actually, it was life-changing for some of them, and actually for me in a way, because somehow being around other people and being honest, how often do we do that in a group where we go somewhere that isn't meant to be therapy, and we share our innermost things about our lives and ourselves and trust other people with them? If handled right, and it's coming out on the page and it's leaving something to record, I think is a hugely productive thing for people, and leads to a huge increase in well-being. And I see it. I think I know about the writing and reading and well-being thing because I have seen it for 20 years now, to the extent that I really think, especially in perhaps our age group, when people get into their 50s and 60s, there is a huge difficulty among people with self-belief. And I mean huge. And that's something that I know that I've had to address to get over obstacles to writing before the writing can be what it needs to be. It's really big, that stuff. So me finding that out and acknowledging it and finding ways to get around it has been really interesting, I think. I count myself in that, by the way, not just everybody else.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the memoir, because are you working on your own memoir, or is it just that, because a lot of memories come out in your poetry, like memories of the past, memories of childhood, but are you actually working on a prose memoir?
I've written it. It's finished.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's
Is it out there? I missed.
No, it's not out there because I haven't put it out there. I'm still sitting on it. I did send it for some readings, and I sent it to Granta, and they read it and gave me some really lovely feedback, but that said that it was going to be too hard to market. But the really lovely feedback for me was what I needed to hear. I needed it validated. I think that it was good writing, because it's doubly hard, isn't it, when you're writing about your own stuff. So that feedback meant a huge amount to me, and it made it less important to me that the thing was out there published, and more important that I waited until I really felt able to do that, and that I found the right publisher to do that with, which hasn't happened yet. And I kind of know, because I know myself, that I'll sit on that until one day I just know it's the right time and try again. But in the meantime, I'm writing another one. That memoir that I've written is about my life from the age of birth to 14. It finishes on my 14th birthday. So the whole book is only about that time. The one I'm writing now is focused on my fostering and adoption. So, and it deals entirely with that, with the story of that, and how I found out about that and what I've done since about that. And it is about, I'm not sure yet whether it'll just be my story, it might have other stories within it, but I'm very, very keen, Deirdre, to dispel this myth that Long Lost Families puts out on the television and into our living rooms, where everything is always rosy and everyone lives happily ever after. And when you meet your birth parent, that's the end of, that's the end of the journey, when actually it's the beginning of a much more difficult one. But that wouldn't suit the television, would it? And so many people don't have that experience. And I'd like to write that. I'd like to write about that.
The angle, for instance, in Jackie Kay's story and Lem Sisse's story, there's such different stories. And, you and I have friends who've been adopted. And for some, it's meeting your birth mother is a big deal. And, well, it's always a big deal. But for some, it's just, okay, I've done that. There isn't always this special bond.
No, but equally, there's also an awful lot who don't want to know, who don't actually want to do that. So it's about living your life without that, and what you decide to do about that, and not just that, but other relatives, etc. So it's just really saying that there are different ways that we live, and we don't have to believe all the myths that are put out there about birth stories, basically.
Very interesting what marketing departments do with that. I mean, the feedback you got that they wouldn't know how to market it, because so many I know you're from Lancashire, like Andrea Ashworth's book was, a Northern Lass's Tale. Graham Caveney's was like a Northern Lad. There's always a kind of this box you're put into.
Yeah.
But there is a strong sense of place in your writing.
Yeah.
Are you aware of that? Is it something you work with?
I think because I write a lot about childhood and about when I did live in Lancashire, it seeps through. I don't think I deliberately, it's the same thing. People point it out to me. Like when I say, well, can you tell where I'm from? Do I have an accent? And they go, yeah. Other people point it out to you. I don't sit down and think I'm going to write about my northern roots now, or necessarily my family or anything like that. It just, what comes really. And then I realise afterwards, it's a bit like when people read your poems and feed back to you all the things they found in them that you haven't actually written or you hadn't realised were there. But sometimes they're right, and they make you realise what's actually underneath there.
I mean, I don't know. I know very little about accents in Britain at all. But I was reading a poem again today that I noticed one person, you talk about a game of tig and people being on. Whereas for years I've been reading people talking about tag and somebody is it. But we talked about tig and on, and that chain that went red line, we used to call it. But it's those little things in the idiom of the writing that comes out.
I've just recently written actually a poem called Learning the Language, which is really about how you, when you start to think, how do you think you became someone whose life was around words and language? And it has a lot of that in it. All the different words for ginnel are in that. We called it a ginnel. And there's a line that says the ginnel, the jitty, gennel, alley, that you said was a ginnel, because it was a ginnel for us. That's all it was, a ginnel. Still is.
I remember somebody telling me once she couldn't put ma'am in her stories, and I said, you absolutely must put ma'am in your stories if that's what you call your mother, that she was translating it into mum. We always found that odd in Mother's Day cards, that you could find one saying mum, and when they started producing one saying ma'am, it makes a difference if that's what you call them. So,
there's a line in one of my plays actually that is all about it's all around the different words for bread, so tea cakes and cobs and baps, and that you wouldn't put. I went in a shop, I think, when I came here and asked for a ham tea cake, and they all looked at me as if I was mad, because tea cakes have raisins in them, but we call them tea cakes back there. So it just finds its way into everything.
Who do you read for inspiration, or what other writers do you like?
I like a lot of women writers. Rose Tremaine springs to mind. Hilary Mantel. I like Alan Bennett's stuff very much. I've read almost everything he's ever written. I read a lot of poets. I like Vicky Fever and Caroline Duffy. Billy Collins in particular is a great favourite of mine. Seamus Heaney. Although I wouldn't say that there are a few authors where I've gone out and read every book they've ever written because I love them so much, apart from people like Jane Austen. But I just read an enormous number of different things, really, over the years. And when you put on the spot, it's hard to think of a single author's name.
Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah.
I do actually have an enormous bookcase here. I read a lot of memoir, particularly since I decided I would write it. I have stacks of memoirs, and I've read a lot of really, really good memoirs that I've enjoyed.
Any recommendations? Because I love memoir.
Cathy Rents and Brink, I think she's called. Brilliant one. Obviously Jeanette Winterson and Why Be Happy When It Could Be Normal.
Janice Galloway's I really liked.
Yes, Janice I haven't read that yet. I've got that
Yeah.
actually on my bedside cabinet. So yeah, Graham Caven's I thought was great. And one or two actually well-known, like celebrity type people that have actually written their own books. I've enjoyed the guy, I can't remember his name, who writes about growing up as a boy, and how that one.
Robert Webb.
Recent.
Is it Robert Webb?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes.
And I haven't read yet, but will, Sandy Toksvig. She's like a bit of a heroine of mine. I love Sandy Toksvig. I love her humour, her personality, her writing, her intelligence, everything about her. I think she's fabulous. Yes, Sandy Toksvig.
Her approach to the memoir, I thought was interesting. Her approach to the memoir of dealing with little snatches. Because I interviewed Emily Pine, who did that with a memoir as well, that she wrote 6 separate essays. And I thought that lots of memoirs do that. I mean, Graham Caveney's does as well.
Yeah.
So what would you say you're most proud of in your career, Cathy? In all the different things you've done?
I think in a sort of wider sense, I'm proud that I've taken some difficulties that I've experienced for a long time early on, and because having experienced them and really having a deep understanding of them, use that to help other people with difficulties. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that that's become a positive. A negative has become a positive. Definitely, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of having been self-employed now for like 10 years and making some kind of full-time living out of that. Because when I did it, when I moved from part employment to full self-employment, I remember thinking, I'll feel like I've done well if I last a year. And to think it's 10 years now is, actually it's more than 10 years. I think, do you do this, Deirdre, when you people are talking to you to go, it's about 10 years ago, and then you think there's 20. So I left my last job in 2008.
Literature officer would have stopped in 2007, 2008. Yeah.
Well, 12 years going on 13 that I've been self-employed fully, all in the business of writing. So that's I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I got an honorary degree, which was amazing to me. That was in 2014. And remember getting the phone call with someone on the other end saying, I'd like to inform you that you have been nominated for this award. And we'd like to know if you would accept it, because It has been before our, whatever their university borders, and we have unanimously agreed to have this. And I just thought, I remember standing there thinking, who would do this to me? And thinking this has got to be a wind up. And I'm just standing there going, really? Is that really? I couldn't believe. No, it's true. I will email you on the official, from the official university address so that you can believe us, but I'd like you to get back to us on this. And it was so lovely, everything that happened, and meeting the Duke of Devonshire, and being with all the bigwigs, and staying at a posh hotel, and traipsing through the streets to a samba band, and going to the cathedral, and all of that. It was just being treated like royalty. It was absolutely wonderful. I know people don't accept these things, but my God, throw as many as you like my way.
It's your local university. I mean, the University of Derby, and you've done so much community work. And I know the University of Derby has a big intake of mature students. And there must be so many of those past pupils that have, you know, taken courses or will take courses with you. So it's really nice to be recognised in your own.
It is, yeah. And you don't know who nominates you. Someone nominates you. Some official person in the community has seen what you did and nominates you. You're not allowed to know who, and then you've got to be sort of validated by this whole board of people. So yeah, and I still don't know, but that was special. Yeah, so proud of them.
You turned them down. Sorry? I mean, I can imagine, I didn't know people turned them down. I can imagine why you turned down royal honours, but I didn't think people would turn down honorary degrees.
Well, like, you haven't done the work for that sort of thing. You haven't done the degree, so do you really deserve that?
Gosh, you have. We've run out of time, Cathy. It's been lovely to talk to you. So, do you have a last reading for us?
I do. And I don't think I'd have written this without COVID, actually. So this is the last poem. It's called, well, it's not got a title yet, so new. On the first day, no difference. Breakfast, lunch, tea. I waited to feel afraid. On the third day, I lay in my unmown grass. I had never been more alive. On the eighth day, I worked on quietening my happiness, but could not find shame. Someone cried, said we might never go back. On the 23rd day, I dreamt my hair was a gift for the birds to make nests. They flew into it, singing. On the 40th day, I woke for the 40th time, still longing for nothing more. On the 51st day, I thought of the dead I had known and knew love. By the 80th day, I had begun my life over. Money was nothing. I sat in the sun, sleeping, woke to daisies opening, learned the smell of imminent rain. On the 84th day, at dawn, I went out in the garden alone, called with my one voice, heard the echo listening. Every day I made do. I rationed my life, became small. I climbed into my own pocket, like a bee crawls into the cavern of a foxglove bell to know purple, to know safe. On the 103rd day, they opened the door.